Hello, hi Lucy and Sally, lovely to have you with me, and welcome to everybody watching this. Welcome to a fresh look at mental health. And my name is Bron, and we have all been part of a lovely group doing the One Thought Foundation course, practitioners course, and have all gotten to know each other and have some amazing conversations with each other and get some really, really lovely, fresh thinking around a lot of things. And I just thought it'd be nice, with it being Mental Health Awareness Week this week, for us to share our thoughts and our insights and have some conversations around our thinking about mental health and our understanding and how things might have changed. So over the week, we're going to be sharing lots of different things from a lot of different people. And this is how we're kicking off. And it's really exciting. So thank you both for being with me.
Yeah,
We're happy to be here.
Yeah, very happy to be here, Bron. Thank you.
Cool. So I think what I was thinking in the beginning was like mental health is such a like a massive topic, and especially at the moment we're in the middle of, obviously everybody in the whole world is experiencing something together. We're all in the middle of coronavirus pandemic, and I know that there's a lot of concern about the mental health effects this is going to have on people, you know, what it's having on them now and what the likely effects are going to be further on down the road. And it just struck me when I was thinking around that, how much we place like a good and a bad on mental health. And how, like to me, mental health is, it's like our body. It's just a health. It's a function. It's a system. It's something that's always there. So I'm interested to sort of look at the spin that we put on it, on positive, negative, and to kind of talk about what we see about mental health. And we've had a great conversation before that. So let's see if we can draw on some of those.
Well, I'm happy to talk about an experience that happened to me last year, where I went on a retreat with a woman called Rohini Ross, who's an amazing human being, and she was pointing towards the direction of perfection, I suppose, that we're all perfect, and her way of describing it was that filters come in the way of that perfection. And she just said, what if there's nothing wrong with you? I kept saying to her, no, but you don't understand, there's this and there's that, and, you know, I came from this place and I came from that place. And she said, what if there's just nothing wrong with you? What if you're perfect, and this is a story that you've been telling yourself, that you're damaged goods, or that there's something that you can't fix, that you come from a place that's left you with these imperfections? And what if that's not true? What if that's just a story you tell yourself? And in that moment, I knew she was right. I can't explain why, and I don't know what part of me she was talking to, but in that moment, it was like, oh, of course she's right. Of course she's right. You know, we're all perfect, and we tell ourselves stories that hold us hostage, I guess, in a way. And now I operate from that place as much as I can. I go back to that place. I'm like, no, that story is not true. I'm okay. And it's an amazing resource that I have now. It's changed everything for me in quite a fundamental way, that I can always return back to that place. I have that choice to go back to that place of being okay or being perfect, and that any stories I tell myself about that not being the case, I'm aware that it's not real. I have an awareness of that now, and it's a gift.
Do you know, it's beautiful to hear you say that. And while you're speaking, like, the amount, you know, there's nobody I know who I don't think is perfect. You know, like all my friends, all the people I come into contact with, my kids, other people's kids. Do you know what I mean? Like if we look at people, and I'm sure most of us, I mean, like obviously you can have a thought about there being bad people, but when it comes down to it, people that you care about and have a connection with, like, don't they always look just perfect in your eyes? you know, and if they were to sort of turn around and say, oh, well, I'm broken, I'm damaged, you know, it's easy to see that underneath that all is that perfect human, especially with my kids, you know, like I can see that they're just so innocent. It would break my heart if they turned around and said, there's something wrong with me, I'm horrible, I'm not a nice person, you know, I don't deserve it, I don't deserve to be loved or anything. Like, oh, you're perfect, you know. So it's such a gift to see yourself as that, isn't it? And I think like, definitely that's what I've seen as well, so with this understanding. But it's so easy to slip in and out of remembering it, for me.
Yeah. That's definitely, you know, sometimes I definitely have to remind myself. I get into that sort of rut, into a sort of a rut of there's something wrong with me, I can't do this, I'm different. And then I'm like, no, I'm no different to anybody else around me, who I also, as you said, see as perfect, essentially perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Lucy, you said that when you were talking to Rahini, she said something to you that just popped for you and made you see something about you completely differently, and about how you were in life completely differently. And for me, it was reading a quote from Sid Banks, and it was in the beginning, it was the opening of the Inside Out from Michael Neal. And I read this quote, and I'm going to read it if that's okay. And the quote is, if the only thing people learned was not to be afraid of their experience, that alone would change the world. And I think it changed my world because I read it just as I was about to be in a difficult family situation. And somehow reading that, all my thinking about the situation that I'd had of dread and concern and anxiety sort of dropped away. And in its place came, the situation was no different. I mean, it was like reading that, what is it? It's one sentence with a comma halfway through it. Reading that one sentence just woke me up to something different. And I think it stopped whatever thinking I had in my tracks. And in its place came completely fresh thinking that not only made me feel lighter and better, but really helped me to be more resourceful and better in the situation that I was in, or my family was in. And I carried on looking in the sort of I didn't read the book for ages after that, there wasn't time. But when I kind of looked further into what I'd seen and what Sid Banks was referring to and what other people have talked about and what we've touched on so far, is I realized that what changed was not the outside world, but it was my thinking changed without me doing anything. And my thinking and my feeling were completely connected. So in that pause, when my other thinking dropped away and my feelings changed and fresh thinking came in, my mental state was entirely different after just, I don't know, a minute or 2 minutes. And it lasted. It wasn't a sort of false feel-good feeling. It was a completely different place to come from. So that's when you were speaking about the moment when you saw something different. I had a moment of seeing something different and then kept looking to see afterwards, what was that? What else is there to see as well about mental health?
Can I ask you a question, Sally?
Mm.
When you read that sentence about not being scared of your experience, or is that the right thing? Can you reread it to me, that sentence?
If the only thing people learned was not to be afraid of their experience,
afraid of
learn would change the world.
Can you just explain what that meant to you, like in your actual experience?
if the only thing people learned was not to be afraid of their experience, that alone would change the world.
So what was your understanding of that when you read it? Like, what shifted for you? What were you afraid of, that was living with you? Was it the experience?
I think I was afraid that there was something horrible happening in the world, which in many respects there still was. It was a serious illness of a family member. But my experience of it, I don't know what happened when I read that quote. Something just opened up for me. And all the thinking I'd had, all the anxious, very tight thinking that I'd had, dropped away. And so my experience of that situation was completely different after that dropping away of the thinking I'd had at the time. Does that answer your question, Lucy? Or
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get. Yeah. It does. Yeah.
I've had a huge, that quote means a lot to me as well. That's resonated with me a lot as well, because I 6 years ago, I lost my dad and my brother in different circumstances, but very tragically. And until I came across this sort of understanding and this conversation, I didn't realize how much I did not want to feel grief. I did not want to miss them. And so I did everything in my power to avoid that. And along the way, picked up depression, anxiety, all these horrible things, all these things that we label as horrible, and got so entrenched in this trying to avoid my experience because I just didn't want it to be happening. And hearing those words and reading those words, so it was like, and understanding how it works, that actually, those things come and go, because I don't think I never noticed that amidst all that, trying to avoid that sensation and avoid those feelings and avoid that experience, there were other experiences going on as well. But I was so focused on the ones I didn't want to have that I didn't even notice the ones, like having 2 brand new children. My second daughter was born 6 weeks after my brother died, and like I just feel like that whole beginning bit was just caught up in just trying to avoid feeling really, really sad and awful, which is a natural feeling. It's a natural experience. And I think that's what's so interesting as well, is that we all go in and out of all these feelings that we then decide that we don't want, or we want to resist. We don't want to feel sad, we don't want to feel depressed and lonely and whatever. So we think we've got to fix it, rather than just, exactly like Sydney Banks said, like rather just, if we weren't afraid of it and we just let it happen and let it pass through, another experience would be along around the corner that we might be able to notice, because we're not so fixated on that one. I think that's what that sort of really hit home. I love that quote. It's my favorite of his.
And I thought when I first, if I thought about it before I read it, so to speak, I would have always put my experience down to what was happening in the world, in the outside world. And Bron, what you've just talked about points so clearly to the fact that our experience is what's going on in our minds, our thoughts and our feelings. Our experience is us. And by not being afraid of our experience in our heads, it doesn't have us in the way that it does have us when we think it's coming at us from outside. And like you said, it just changes if we, thought comes and goes. Thought is very fluid. Unless we hang on to it, it will go, and so another one will come along in its place.
Well, Lucy's example before we got on was brilliant. Yeah. Lucy, if you want to talk about the whole.
Well, I guess I'm just noticing in lockdown, which is sort of essentially a controlled experiment for identifying whether your emotions go up and down with nothing changing on the outside, because you can't leave the house, right? And I find that some days I deal with lockdown fine, I take it in my stride, homeschooling, it's all good. And other days I want to scream. And literally nothing has changed. Nothing. You know, I'm still cooking the same meals, dealing with the same kid, doing the same homeschooling, trying to get the same work done. It's all the same. But some days it's totally fine, and actually I'm quite enjoying it. And other days it feels intolerable. And this, for me, gives me a real understanding of the fact that it's just my mood fluctuating. You know, it really is my mood fluctuating. And that what's going on the outside is not in charge of that. You know, it's just there. So yeah, it's a real, I mean, dare I say it, inside out experience, because there's very little out. So yeah, I'm very aware of my mood, of where I'm at the moment, because there are no distractions. I don't know what more to say about that, other than that it has been very informative in that way, just as to be able to sort of watch my moods go up and down, and to see what I do with that.
It's so tempting as well, though, isn't it? Like I think every single person I've spoken to is feeling the same. You know, so like you say, it's a great controlled experiment, but like sometimes, and I know maybe for some people listening, like sometimes it really looks like our kids' behavior is what's causing you to feel mad. And I've thought that a couple of times, but then I've really noticed that their behavior is pretty standard every day. Like they push their luck, they moan, their little rat bags, like pretty much every day. But I definitely react differently, differently some days. So like you said, I'd love it if we could speak a little bit more to what's different. Like, do we see something as being different? What do we see to being different? You touched on it there with moods, but then I often find like my moods are a reflection of my thinking, and I suppose this speaks a little bit to like our sort of state of mind, isn't it? I don't know if somebody wants to talk about that.
Have you got something to say, Sally?
No, it looked like you were about to speak, Lucy. So.
Well, I guess only that I know where my mood is by how I feel. So it's almost backwards. It's almost like I go, oh, I'm feeling a bit cranky today. Penn's homeschooling doesn't seem to be going as smoothly as I'd like it to be. And then I look inside and I'm like, oh, guess what? You're not in a great place. And it sort of works that way around for me now. Whereas before it was the other way around. It's like, he's the problem. He's not doing the schoolwork. Therefore I'm in a bad mood. And it's not, and I'm noticing more and more that it's not anything to do. It's kind of like what you said, Bron. It's like, I'm feeling not so great. Oh, I'm in a bad place. And therefore his homework is feeling like a real difficult task today. So it's totally backwards than how I always thought it was. Reverse, I should say. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great.
So I see it differently, and it doesn't become about him. It's like, oh, okay, I'm in not a great place, so maybe I'll just be gentle with the homeschooling today. Maybe let's not try and get it all done today, because
it all goes pear-shaped when you try and force it in that sort of a space, doesn't it? Like, it never works. And I think I often think, well, I'm like, I really have got a lot of thinking about this. You need to do your work. I need you to be behaving. I need you to be quiet while I do my meeting. And it just doesn't work. Whereas on the days when I feel a little bit when I'm in a better place, so to speak, it's much easier. Like, suddenly something will pop into my head, like an insight or a sort of spark of wisdom will sort of pop in, and okay, well, let's go for a bike ride now. everybody just needs to get out, you know, and we'll all go for a bike ride and we'll come back, and it might be different. It might not be. We might still not get any work done, but we'll all have calmed down a little bit, you know. Or it might be that, okay, well, clearly you don't want to sit down and do this type of homework. Let's do something else, you know. And it just, like, definitely those are the days where it feels like I'm much more inspired. And I suppose what I'm noticing as well is that actually, if if things really feel tight, and I'm noticing that with myself, that I'm sort of, I suppose we've you know, like at a lower, in a basement place, that's okay. It will pass. It will pass if I don't try and force it to pass. When I try and force it to pass, it becomes much more sticky. You know, and when I can just back off a little bit, I get a much. I know Aaron from One Thought, Aaron Turner sort of says, you know, it's clarity of mind, isn't it? You get a little bit of clarity and something pops in.
I definitely nowadays, as soon as I feel like somebody's driving me crazy or something is driving me crazy, I stop. I'm like, okay, where am I at? Because I'm very quick to go, it's you or it. But actually, let's check in and just see where I'm at. And that really, really helps me just have that sort of breather of, okay, all right, in this place with this situation, I'm not functioning very well.
And then you don't do stuff which is going to make it worse that you have to clear up afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, like it means that you're not creating something out there in the world which is then going to be something we have to take responsibility for then clearing up afterwards. And I was walking home from, this is before lockdown, but I was walking home from work one day, and I popped into the local Sainsbury's. I think the trains had been late, everything. It was one of those classic kind of like work days, commuter days, all wrong. I was in such a foul mood. And there's a very friendly guy in our local Sainsbury's, and he was chat to begin with us. Like, oh, but he's so nice, it's impossible. And I go there regularly, so it would have been very rude not to chat back. And so by the time I left the Sainsbury's, I was a completely different, you know, that clarity of mind you spoke about, going from basement thinking to, you know, I don't know how many floors he'd taken me up in terms of just chatting and getting me out of my head. And I was walking along the road and I was thinking, oh, I was thinking about something before I went into Sainsbury's. What was it? And I could just remember a taste of the feeling, and it wasn't a very nice kind of feeling or taste. And I was like, oh my goodness, I was in such a bad mood and such a bad place. And at the time when I've been thinking it, you know, it occupied me all the way home, on the train, on the walk. I was like, how interesting that something that seemed like a permanent state of mind at that moment, and I couldn't have got myself out of it, actually 5 minutes in Sainsbury's had taken me somewhere completely different in my mind, and I'd forgotten all about what it was. There was just a remnant of it. And it was that choice moment, almost carrying on the walk and thinking, well, do I want to go back to that state of mind? Do I want to go back to that set of feelings? I was like, no, I really don't. Yeah, that's just that. I don't know, it was such a simple but wonderful example to me of what I'd learned about the fluidity of thought, and how, you know, to go back to that thing of creating our own experience and experiencing our own experience. And when our thought changes, so does our experience change. So thank you to the man at Sainsbury's, but also thank you to this understanding, because now I kind of understand what was going on.
And isn't it great? Like, you didn't actually do it. You weren't aware that you were changing your thought, you know, and that's key, isn't it? Because often we can think we've got to do something rather than just. And sometimes I think, like, you think you can do something and then you think your way into something else, and then it doesn't work, so you still feel rubbish. Whereas actually, like, different stuff's coming along all the time, isn't it? And it just happened naturally there for you, which is just such a great example, isn't it?
Yeah, and if you have to try and think about changing your thought when you're in that low state of mind, it's like everything that comes from that low state of mind is going to be of the same low state of mind. So it's just an alternative low state of mind thought. It doesn't have anything to offer. Go on, Lucy.
I had a real example of that yesterday, because my mum wasn't answering the phone. I was set to go around and do something for her. And she told me the day before that she wasn't feeling good and that she was worried. And then she didn't answer the phone by 2:00. It's very unlike her. So I decided to drive over. And I'd got myself in a worried state of mind. And exactly what you said, Sally, I just flipped from one terrible thought to another terrible thought. And I kept going, no, but this is just a thought. And then instead of, feeling better, I just had another scary thought. And I could feel it. It was a sensation. It was like, and then I just went, okay, I'm just in this place. I'm in this place. There's nothing I can do. I'll get there and we'll find what I'll find. And suddenly the grip had gone. It was like I wasn't the sort of, the thoughts weren't the master. I was just aware that I was in an agitated, slightly anxious place, and that anything, as you correctly said, that came up from that place was going to scare me. But also that it wasn't real.
Yeah.
Which is the important part. I was very outside of it. I was watching the thoughts, and it was like, okay, I'm in a scared place, and the thoughts that are coming up, strangely, are scary. But I was. Go on.
Yeah, no. Sorry, I interrupted.
I'm done. No, I'm pretty much done.
But that's so. It's fascinating, isn't it? Because I've had those fearful thoughts as well. Something happened the other night. Oh, I'm from South Africa, and break-ins are very common in South Africa. And obviously I live in the UK now. I haven't lived in South Africa for ages, but my sister does live there still, and they had a break-in. And I'd been talking to her that evening, and I lay in my bed and I remembered what it felt like to live there and be scared that something was going to happen. And I actually felt physical symptoms of fear. Like I was afraid for my life in my house in the middle of Wales in the UK, a million miles from like where I was imagining. I was like, and I really noticed that. And because I'm so aware that that's a thought, and I was making this reality up that was so not true, like so obviously not true, but I was feeling all these physical symptoms. It was just mind-blowing. It was mind-blowing how much of a connection there was there. And it would have been easy for me to have kept going on. Oh my God, remember what this felt like? Remember this felt like, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And not sleep all night. But because I was aware, I was like, no, okay, you don't have to stay on this thought train. You don't have to stay here. It's not real. And it was much easier to change it. And like you said with your mum, when you finally said, okay, well, I'm just going to find what I'm going to find. It just kind of.
He was fine, by the way.
It wasn't such a grip. Yeah, thank goodness. I'm glad to hear that. But and it just, like, it can grip you so hard, isn't it? And there was.
And it was just that understanding of like, these are thoughts. None of this is real. I'm scared. That's all I needed to know in that moment, was that I'm just scared, and anything that comes out of that is going to be scary, but not real.
No. And to go back to where you started, Lucy, it's to know underneath all that thinking, all that busy thinking, all that train of thought, all that scared thinking, that underneath that there's a much more peaceful, clear place. And from that peaceful, clear place comes completely different thought and feeling, much more, I don't know, just much more neutral and calm and helpful, or useful.
And that to me is mental health.
And
that to me is the essence, is that underneath all the stuff there's just calm and clarity and well-being. It's there all the time, isn't it? Even if we know it, even if we don't, it doesn't matter if we don't know it. It's there, and all we can do, it's great if we know it, but even if we forget for a moment, it's always there. You can't do anything to break it or lose it.
And that's why often I think when you're with someone who might be experiencing anxiety or a panic attack, or somehow you can see that they're okay underneath all of that. They might not know it in the moment, but we as humans, we can sort of sense that underneath all of that, they are okay. They are okay all throughout this happening.
And isn't it interesting that when somebody's upset, you want to say to them, you're okay, it's okay, you're okay, and never a true word is spoken, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful, ladies.
Yeah.
That might be a good place to finish. Have we got anything to add to finish off?
No, I feel like I loved what you said, Bron, about just knowing that it's always there. If we forget, if it feels obscured or the filters are in the way or life is too chaotic, but just having that belief, that knowledge, that understanding that it's just there. It's a thought away or not even a thought away. It's just a moment away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not be afraid of what's happening in the moment if it feels uncomfortable, because that's coming from that thought place. And when that thought goes, and it will take that feeling with it, and then something fresh will come in its place.
Which doesn't happen when you're in the story. That's the thing, isn't it? You're in the story or the moment, and the fresh stuff doesn't come when you're in the story.
Yeah, that's so true, Lucy. Yeah.
Oh, fab. So to those listening, if this is the first time you're hearing this, I hope it's been interesting and useful, and we'll be exploring this a lot more in the week to come. So please come back. And if you've got any questions or thoughts, we'll be exploring lots of different things, but all kind of pointing to the same thing. So yeah, I know when I first heard this, it gave me a lot of hope. So I'm hopeful that it's doing the same for others. But yeah,
and that's what I love about hearing other people's experience of the same thing, is to see that everyone's had different places they've come from into this understanding, and everyone's had some very, very difficult experience or different things happening, but how this fresh look at mental health has really changed their experience of life. It's very, whoever said very hopeful it is.
Lovely. Thank you, ladies. That's been awesome.
Thank you, Bron.
Thank you, Bron.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.